They say you can tell a lot about a person by their smile, but nobody ever tells you what to do when a smile feels rehearsed, when it lingers half a second too long, when it doesn't reach the eyes. On the night, everything changed. Marcus Hale smiled like a man who knew, something the rest of us didn't, and no one thought to be afraid. This is a story about power, about silence, and about the danger of underestimating the person you think can't hurt you. Evan Brooks was invisible. That wasn't an insult, it was a fact. 27 years old, janitor at the Hawthorne Municipal Building, working night shifts while the city slept. He moved through hallways of polished marble and framed portraits like a ghost, cleaning up after people who would never learn his name. Except one man, Marcus Hale. Hale was everything. Evan wasn't. City commissioner, wealthy, charismatic, regular on local news panels. The kind of man who shook your hand while already looking past you. To Marcus Hale, Evan Brooks wasn't a person. He was background noise. And background noise is easy to mistreat. It started small, comments, jokes, whispered just loud enough to hear. Careful, don't let the janitor touch that. Some people are born to clean up after. Others. Staff laughed nervously. Evan smiled politely. He needed the job. His mother's medical bills didn't care about dignity. But then came the night Evan walked into the commissioner's office and saw something he wasn't supposed to see. A folder left open on the desk. Inside were zoning approvals, unsigned and undated, stacked next to envelopes that were very clearly not paperwork. Cash has a look to it. As a new, he'd handled enough lost wallets to recognize it. When Marcus Hale appeared in the doorway, he didn't yell. He didn't panic. He smiled. That should have been a warning. Marcus stepped closer, closed the folder himself, and spoke softly. "You didn't see anything, Evan. It wasn't a question." Evan nodded. What else could he do? But something shifted that night, because Marcus Hale didn't trust Evan anymore. And powerful men don't tolerate loose ends. Within weeks, complaints appeared. Evan was late. Evan was careless. Evan was suspected of theft. None of it was true. All of it was documented. When Evan tried to defend himself, Marcus smiled again, this time in front of witnesses. "You should be grateful," he said. "People like you don't get many chances." Marcus thought he was burying a problem. He didn't realize he was creating an enemy. Evan lost his job, his income, his routine, but he didn't lose his memory. Every insult, every false report, every smile that said, "I can do this because no one will stop me." Evan started writing things down, dates, times, names. He started listening instead of speaking, watching instead of reacting. Power makes people careless, especially when they think they're untouchable. And Marcus Halen was very careless. Late one night, Evan returned to the municipal building. Not as in witnesses. "You should be grateful," he said. "People like you don't get many chances." Marcus thought he was burying a problem. He didn't realize he was creating an enemy. Evan lost his job, his income, his routine, but he didn't lose his memory. Every insult, every false report, every smile that said, "I can do this because no one will stop me." Evan started writing things down, dates, times, names. He started listening instead of speaking, watching instead of reacting. Power makes people careless, especially when they think they're untouchable. And Marcus Halen was very careless. Late one night, Evan returned to the municipal building. Not as an employee, but as a man with nothing left to lose. He sat in his car across the street and watched the lights. At 3:42 p.m., Marcus Hale exited with two men. Evan recognized from the folders he'd seen weeks earlier. No smiles now, just urgency. Evan recorded everything, faces, voices, license plates. The underdog had become a witness. Over the next month, Evan built something quietly. A timeline, a pattern, proof. He sent anonymous tips, not to the police, but to journalists. Because Evan understood something Marcus never did. Truth doesn't need power, it needs patience. The first article dropped on a Tuesday morning, then another, then a third. By Friday, Marcus Hallway was no longer smiling on television. By Monday, investigators were standing where Evan once mopped floors. The city watched as the commissioner stumbled through a press conference, sweat replacing charm. And for the first time, Marcus Halley looked small. The man who built his life on silence was now drowning in noise. Evan sat at home. Story doesn't end there. Because as the investigation deepened, detectives found something unexpected buried in Marcus Hale's records. A name? A payment? Dated years before Evan ever worked at the building. And when Evan saw that name on the news, his face went pale. Because it wasn't just corruption. It was something darker. Something that tied Marcus Halley to a case everyone thought was already closed. And the smile that should have been a warning might have been hiding far. Worse than anyone imagined, the name on the screen was Lydia Brooks, Evan's mother. The room felt smaller, as the anchor explained that the payment was linked to a sealed investigation from 12 years earlier, a case involving falsified building inspections, a deadly fire, and a witness who recanted at the last moment. Evan remembered that year too clearly. The hospital smell, the way his mother's hands shook when she signed forms she didn't understand. The fire had been ruled an accident. The inspector cleared. The file closed. Evan had believed it because he needed to. Now the past clawed its way back. And with it came a truth that didn't care whether he was ready. Investigators reopened the case, and the city began to whisper. Marcus Halley sat in a holding cell, staring at the wall where his smile recanted at the last moment. Evan remembered that year too clearly. The hospital smell, the way his mother's hands shook when she signed forms she didn't understand. The fire had been ruled an accident. The inspector cleared. The file closed. Evan had believed it because he needed to. Now the past clawed its way back. And with it came a truth that didn't care whether he was ready. Investigators reopened the case, and the city began to whisper. Marcus Halley sat in a holding cell, staring at the wall where his smilithum. Marcus didn't smile this time. He studied like a puzzle he'd solved too late. You think this fixes it? Mavinarcus said, voice thin. Evan didn't answer. He thought of his mother, older now, braver now, finally telling her story on record. He thought of the fire victims whose names were being read aloud for first time in years. You were nothing, Marcus said, as if saying it might make it true again. Evan leaned closer to the glass. You taught me to pay attention, he replied. The trial moved fast after that. Evidence stacked. Deals collapsed. The inspector from the old case broke under oath. Marcus Halley was convicted on multiple counts. His sentence announced without ceremony. The cameras caught his face again, older somehow, emptied of certainty. The city exhaled. Headlines declared justice served. Evan returned to work not as a janitor, but as a clerk in records, hired quietly, trusted carefully. He liked the order of files, the honesty of dates. His mother watched from home, proud and tired, finally sleeping through hand. The city had punished one man, but the system that protected him still breathed. Evan filed the photo away, labeled it carefully, and began a new timeline. Because once you learn how power hides, you can't unsee it. And somewhere watching the same news, someone else stopped smiling, realizing the underdog they ignored had learned to hunt in the open. H.J.